You are in a battle, and what must happen is that your soul awakens to the fact that you are playing a chess game with your opponent, the ego. As long as you let the ego impersonate you and believe its thoughts are your own, you lose the game. You become a mirror image of the ego's program. But if you realize that it's all delusional and stop engaging with it, even if you can't silence the thoughts, you don't have to believe in them. By losing interest in them, you can focus on the question, who am I, if not this ego mind? What is my consciousness? When you return to the core of your presence, you'll find it peaceful, light and joyous, simply by being in a silent mind. Gradually, you'll want to return to that state more often, until you overcome the habit of entertaining the ego's retaliation. Once you're no longer interested in the ego, it loses its power as it feeds off your identification with it. It's like a parasite. If you don't give it your energy when it produces anger or negative thoughts, and instead remain in the blissful self, the ego starves and dies. However, you must actively work to starve it. Recognize that the observation and observer are one thing. Dealing with any idea is understanding how to work with your own mind. In essence, there is no external, as it's a projection of the internal. What's perceived is coming from the source that's observing. Remove the source and the external wouldn't exist. To change any perceived external is to shift the perspective within. Nothing has any inherent fixed meaning, and the perspective it's being viewed from will change how it's perceived. The shift in perspective is a shift in mindset. So instead of looking at things from the mindset of a victim, things can be viewed from the lens of a creator that's creating the preferred reality. With the creator mindset, you know that you can shift your perspective to see things differently at will and aren't bound by unconscious reactions. There's always something you can do which isn't realized when under the victim mindset. So instead of asking, why is this happening in the world? You can ask, what can I do to lessen the darkness? By being the example you want to see in the world, your light will shine and will make it easier for those in the darkness to see. If you're in the dark yourself, then what you see is more darkness. When you're being your highest self, you become the inspiration. Inspire translates to in spirit. Being in spirit is what unlocks the light within. To turn it on is to operate at your higher level of consciousness. In the Orthodox Jain tradition, they fast until death to complete their karma and enter God consciousness. But they also fast mentally, not just physically. This mental fasting helps them avoid the need to return in another life. But why wait until the end of life for that? The battle against the ego seems impossible to win. But if you keep at it without beating yourself up for the back and forth struggle, you will eventually master your mind. You will assert your sovereignty over it and silence it. If there's death of death, that implies immortality. No more death. It signifies a kingdom of heaven where we become divine beings. The more I affirm and know my deepest self, the more violently the ego retaliates. The old world must end for a new one to be born. You don't want to exist in both heaven and hell simultaneously, though many try to do just that. When the darkness ends, the time of light begins. It will be a divine world, not a demonic one. The death of death is our attainment of eternal light, even before the mortal body dies, so that light stays with us through the transition from bodily consciousness to transcendental consciousness. At the moment of the body's death, you must be certain of who you truly are, so that the pillar of light retracts into the core of your being, leaving no trace of worldly attachment or identity. Otherwise, you risk becoming an earthbound spirit, lingering around your own funeral, wondering if people are crying for you. The only moment where a choice can be made is the here and now. If you want to truly heal, a desire to apply and integrate has to be made right now. So choose to be calm, relaxed, patient, and let go of all thoughts. The present moment is an opportunity to reset, as it's the only moment you're experiencing. By dragging thoughts into it, history is repeating itself, thus delaying healing. Free yourself from your conditioned mind by being right here, right now, and stay here. The healed state is the detachment from the conditioned mind, thus feeling liberated. It's called rest in peace, because that's what's literally happening. You're resting perpetually in peace. No thoughts, no worries, no fears, no pressure to do, to say, nothing. Just resting contently right here, right now, completely still and in peace. Recognize this state of being to apply and integrate anytime you're leaving it and reverting back into the conditioned mind. With enough repetition, resting in peace will become the norm. Practice by writing down everything you're doing throughout the day as you're doing them. Then beside each one, ask yourself why you're doing it. Get to the core motivation and not just the justification. The core is the intention and desire. The justification is doing it because something happened. All justifications come from the ego, as there's no depth of understanding. So it runs on knee-jerk reactions as a result. The intention and desire is the why. Why are you really doing it? Is it to mask fear or distract from pain? Really get to the root for which stems to the surface. When you're able to identify it, you can then make a choice to not repeat the pattern and choose something entirely new. Your application of your newfound choices will gradually lead to transformation. Is there a countdown for the end of time that the mind can perceive? It is perceivable to the pure mind, but not to the egoic mind. God comes like a thief in the night. You must always be ready, prepared in every moment, because God loves surprises. Once you're in the mind of the eternal flame, it no longer matters when it happens, because it only happens to the illusion. If you understood all of this fully, you'd realize that no one truly suffers. It appears that everyone is suffering, some more intensely than others, but the world is merely an illusion, a movie, a holographic fractalized appearance. The self that sustains every individual consciousness is God, who is immune to suffering. God can take in suffering and transform it into bliss. However, each being must undergo their own karma, which God has specifically designed to awaken them. Your personal karma is given to help you figure out what you haven't yet let go of. Most people haven't let go of their baby self-image, the identity connected to their parents. That's why they often imitate their family's emotional patterns and symptoms. Everyone has the kind of suffering they need to awaken to the truth of the self, which transcends bodily pain and death. This is a time of death, but also the death of death. Remove conditions to be happy and be one with your authentic self. If there's any conditions or dependencies to experience that state of being, then the human life will become a roller coaster ride of ups and downs. To maintain being up or high is to not depend on anything outside of the self to feel joyful. Simply put, just be. Recognize how it feels to not have any thoughts and rest in this present moment awareness. The egoic mind might resist, as it's been conditioned by constant stimulation, which led to dependencies, so returning to your unconditioned state will take some self-discipline. Dependence is experiencing the false self, which relies on stimulation to be happy, while independence is experiencing the true self, which doesn't require anything to be its authentic self. This doesn't mean to sit around and meditate all day, but to truly be independent and not rely on anything outside of yourself to dictate your state of being. The one that looks outside is a consumer or reactor. The one that's self-aware is the creator. You will never be bound to consume or react as a creator, because you're creating your reality to experience. What's more joyful than creating what you prefer to experience at will? Distinguish the difference when reacting and when creating. Which one feels more self-empowering? Recognize that anything perceived as an external is still within your own mind. This is where you'll find every single perspective that you have the ability to shift freely. If a perspective leads to irritation, shift amongst the infinity of perspectives to see it from all angles, to gain more clarity and understanding. Ask yourself, what don't I know? The ego is quick to judge, as it relies on comfort and familiarity, so it latches onto anything for the sake of appeasing the discomfort of not knowing. So the external isn't causing the irritation, but the perspective that isn't aligned with your true nature. Feelings of disharmony is acting as an alert mechanism to signal to your consciousness that you're getting out of alignment. When you observe your feelings, you can take action to get back into alignment by shifting to a perspective that's of unity rather than more separation. You must understand what self-inquiry really means. It's not a mental activity, but the end of mental activity. I would call it self-wonderment rather than inquiry, because inquiry sounds like you're Sherlock Holmes solving a mystery. Instead, it's about realizing with awe that you are pure consciousness. You know nothing about what consciousness is capable of until you explore it beyond the surface layers. This process is the path to attaining presence beyond thought, with no narratives, only infinite, expansive freedom, wisdom, and joy. As the awe of that realization grows, it never ends. Actualize your creative abilities, otherwise it stays as untapped potential. The physical dimension is for creating things into the physical world. The metaphysical idea is the beginning of the process of creation, for which it becomes crystallized into the reality. You're always creating. This post was created for your desire to experience it. So what do you desire to create to experience? The sleep state is going through the motions of conditioned programming. The wake state is choosing to experience whatever you want to experience. After self-realization is application. You're learning how to work with your own energy to manifest things into your physical reality. The physical body is just a vehicle that consciousness is attuned to, which is part of physical environment. That's why upon exit, the physical body stays here, and what you are is the one that leaves by returning to the frequency prior to lowering down. Hence, the kingdom of heaven is already within. You can experience the state of being while still being connected to the physical body, and don't have to wait until exit to return. The heavenly state is already within, right here, right now. Just tune up by letting go of all lower frequency attachments, and you'll gradually ascend. At the time of departing from the physical body, there will be no fear, no shackles of attachment. This is when we will recognize ourselves beyond our physical shell and enter the next level with confidence, clothed in the garment of eternal light. This battle, this journey, is not just for the end of life, but for life in all its moments. It is for now. It is for every time we close our eyes and return from wherever our minds have wandered, to the here and now, to our bodies and the bliss of existence. In the end, there is only the ego, the lie, the illusion, the dream. But when the mask is torn away, we discover that we are, and always have been, free. You cannot have a range of feelings if you don't exist. So the feeling itself is already making you experience what life is. Existence by nature will always exist, just as non-existence by nature will never exist except a word that attempts to describe an idea. All thoughts stem from the finite mind, which cannot comprehend anything outside of it. To test it for yourself, try thinking of something unfathomable. This is the egoic mind, limited in its capacity to comprehend. What you are is one that knows the I knows nothing.